Hey there, this is Mr. Icarus, and welcome to yet another edition of Doom Mod Madness. This time round, we are checking out Quake Champions Doom Edition. Really, wouldn't that just make it Doom Champions? But regardless, I'm sure you're all very much aware of Bethesda's crack at the Quake universe, what with its Doom Champions currently making the rounds in early access, and the Doom modding community being what it is, they thought, we can do that. And so, here we are, with a multiplayer Doom mod that is objectively better than its inspiration in a number of ways. First of those being, no microtransactions, and second of those being, no bloody loot boxes. This is a mod that just lets you get down to business with the champion of your choosing, and just lets you raise hell in a variety of pretty well-designed multiplayer maps. And one thing that I was also very happy and relieved to find was there is bot support for this as well, so if you're up at stupid hours like I am and can't find anyone live, you'll quite frequently find a whole bunch of matches here fully stocked with bots for you to rumble with. In terms of the champions you'll be able to play as and against, you'll find that there's a fair bit of difference between the rosters of the two versions. For one, there's more of a old school flavor to the characters you'll be able to pick here, but there are a few crossovers. You've got Nyx with her Ghost Walk ability from Quake Champions. You've also got the Doomslayer from Doom 2016, although his ability has been swapped from Berserker Rage to firing a big ass BFG. We've also got the Ranger from OG Quake, and really, it wouldn't be the same without him, but we've also got Bitterman from Quake 2, and even Kane from Quake 4, and if I'm gonna be honest, sometimes I forget that Quake 4 even exists. Rounding out the rest of the roster, we've got Stupid Sexy Corvus from Heretic, a few familiar faces from Hexen, Caleb from Blood makes an appearance, a few characters from Strife, and a Lizard Man that I can't quite place. All in all, that brings the total number of champions available in this version of Doom Edition to 13, which isn't too shabby indeed. Even better that they're all readily available right off the bat. No premium currency bullshit required. So how exactly does Quake Champions Doom Edition feel to play? Well, that's a tricky one for me to gauge because I don't spend quite a lot of time playing multiplayer mods in general when it comes to Doom mods. The only kind of reference I have is Quake 3, Quake Live, and Quake Champions, all three of which I am stunningly average at. And even then, I'm probably being generous. The conditions of play weren't exactly optimal either. I had a choice between Brazilian or Russian servers at the time, and at best, I was dealing with a ping of around about 120, which isn't especially terrible, but when you're dealing with a fast-paced Twitch shooter such as Quake Champions Doom Edition, the lower the better. So bearing all of that in mind, I'd say that the gunplay felt a little loose, but there are mitigating circumstances there. Ultimately, it was something that I was able to compensate for, and after a while I was actually doing a pretty decent job of holding my own against the bots. One method of play that I had quite a lot of fun with during my deathmatch rounds was setting my champion selection to random, meaning that every time I bit the dust, I'd get a brand new champion to play around with. And much like original Quake Champions, each champion here will feature a different max health and armor loadout, as well as a different kind of movement speed in certain cases. Naturally, there's also all of the active abilities that you can play around with, so I found that randomized selection on every death meant I could get a nice little taste of what each individual champion was about until eventually settling on a favorite. On that particular subject, I'm still not entirely sure where my loyalties lie. I'm torn somewhat between the Doomslayer, Terminator, which I'm currently up against, and Menelkir. And this seems to largely be by virtue of their active abilities. Doomslayer, as I've already mentioned, gets the BFG. The Terminator gets a missile swarm which you can unload into anyone unfortunate enough to be stood in front of you. And Menelkir can summon a big-ass Minotaur, which I have to confess feels like the most cheese-tastic of the three, especially concerning bots, because they just run into the damn thing and you rack up what feels like a lot of free kills. Outside of Deathmatch, you'll also find that Quake Champions Doom Edition provides a variety of team-based modes, such as Domination and Capture the Flag, though the availability of those online will depend on whoever's hosting the server. In this case, I was mainly just able to find Domination matches. One of the bigger differences between standard deathmatch and team play seems to be the fact that you're locked down to just one particular kind of champion. And I can't entirely be sure whether this is part of the game or whether it's just simply server preference, but even then it throws up a few issues, namely that of things getting pretty messy in the heat of battle. Now, normally you'd be able to tell your allies from your enemies by the triangle above their heads. Unfortunately, as you rack up achievements and as the enemy does the same, those symbols will appear above their heads, erasing the triangle that lets you know who is who. And when everyone is a red Terminator sprite and everyone is in the same area vying for a point, it can get pretty confusing. You'll often end up launching a few shots into a nearby ally when the enemy was behind you all along. If I could propose a simple fix for that particular issue, make a blue Terminator sprite. I mean, you've already got red ones. Don't really need to do much for the red team, but if you've got a blue team, that makes it a hell of a lot easier to see who you're fighting against. When it comes down to it though, I'll always return to free-for-all deathmatch. It's just wonderful, chaotic fun. And that's just against bots. I can only imagine the fun would be magnified when dealing with actual opponents. The maps here also do a fantastic job of keeping you on your toes, each area within a map often featuring multiple ways in and out, and it always comes back to that cornerstone of Quake multiplayer, which is spawn control. If you can find yourself a good path leading you back to your favorite weapon spawn, not to mention timing the pickup of the ubiquitous power-ups such as quad damage and regeneration, you'll easily find yourself troubling the top portion of those multiplayer leaderboards. So yeah, I think it's safe to say I found myself having quite a lot of fun with this one, so much so that I think I actually prefer playing this to the actual normal version of Quake Champions. I did actually go back and play a few rounds while I was recording footage for this one, and I just thought, Doom Edition's actually more fun. So personally, I feel like this one deserves all of the attention. I feel like it deserves to cultivate a nice little player base all of its own. And for everyone out there that is just sick of microtransactions and loot boxes, come to Doom. Come play Quake Champions Doom Edition. All of the fun, most of the maps, none of the bullshit. But after all that, there's one very important question left. What if you don't care about multiplayer? Well, good sir or madame, do I have news for you. Yep, it's fully playable in single player. Just pick your favorite map set, select your favorite champion, and go nuts. And if you're bored of playing against standard Doom enemies, you can swap them out for Quake, Quake 2, and Quake 4 variants. The only other thing that you should probably watch out for, though, is some of the champions are pretty big and may occasionally get stuck on certain bits of level geometry, depending on the design of the place. But that's a warning that the mod gives to you up front when you select that particular champion. Weapon loadout remains the same no matter who you pick, so there's no real surprises there, but the real fun comes when you just let loose your active ability, and for that reason I'd say the champions with the more offensive style active abilities are probably the best ones to pick for single player map runs. Anyway, I certainly hope some of this has piqued your interest, and if you are certainly itching to give Quake Champions Doom Edition a whirl for yourself, you will find all of the relevant links in the description below. While I'm at it, I'd also like to give a great big thank you to all of my wonderful patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so very much for supporting the channel and helping to make content like this possible. If you fancy lending a hand yourself, you can find the link to my Patreon page at the end of the video and also in the description below. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Feel free to let me know what you thought in the comments, and feel free to suggest any mods you'd like to see me cover in future episodes of Doom Mod Madness. This has been Mr. Icarus. Thank you very much for watching. Icarus out.